All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cashflow Chronicles, episode 80. We are here with Mr. Chris Patel. As always, it's a great time to have a good chat with him. Appreciate everyone's patience. I was out doing God knows what, New Jersey, checking out the Airbnb. It finally stayed in it. I've had over 100 people stay in that damn house, and I never spent a night in it. So it was nice to finally have the opportunity to go up there and hang out with my sister, brother-in-law, two nephews, my niece. Took care of some estate stuff with my family as well. And now I am back in Houston, living the dream. Mr. Patel, how are you?
Good. Did you close on the other one?
No, we lost that one. And then we looked at a few others. We got into some bidding wars. We lost, we pulled out of some of those. And we're in the process of running an offer on another one. And I think we're going to put in an offer on that one. So far, there's no other offers, but it's a nice place,
Okay.
well done. Smaller than we want, 2 bed, 1 bath, but it'll be a nice little cuter place. We'll save a couple $1,000. It's not buying a 3 bed, 2 bath, but at the same time, It's a nice place, and we'll see what ends up happening. But my sister was pretty upset about not getting the other one, but it was also like $500 some $1,000, which coming up with a 25% down payment on that would have been pretty tough. I could have found the money, but I'd much rather be in like the low to mid 300s. So
yeah. So basically, what you're doing is you're creating a REIT. You're buying up assets and then just basically flipping them with the intention of turning them into short-term rentals, right? And then using the income that's produced from them, you would get a loan and then buy in the next one over, right?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I've thought in the future, once maybe I become more standalone and financially independent, and I'm not working a 9 to 5 anymore. If I decide to go down that path, well, I'll find out in 3 to 4 years, I guess, after this new role kind of pans out. But if I become financially independent, that's something I've thought about, which is like buying a property, doing some work to it, getting it cash flowing, and then selling it to people. And then keeping a percentage of it, right? So kind of like syndicating a little bit, but also creating value for people, right? I mean, it's not like I'm going to, but it allows me to create value for myself, but also help create others. But anyway, that's not what I'm doing with this property. This is more of just getting another piece in the portfolio, right? But we have a decent one that's already up there, cash flowing, which is the one I stayed at. The first few days, I was like, this thing needs to be fixed. That needs to be fixed. Did some stuff with the hot tub, getting that all done, and saw some other things where I'm like, okay, we need to fix this. We need to get the carpenter here for that. But overall, I was like, damn, this house is really nice, really relaxing, calm, nice place to kind of get away. It's like a perfect blend of being able to not be in like the hustle and bustle of like downtown Cape May, where there's a lot of like tourism and shops and stuff like that. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but also it's within a 10-15 minute drive of a lot of the beaches and stuff like that too. So it's kind of a jack of all trades. Like you're there, but you're not there at the same time. So it's also way cheaper than staying in downtown Cape May as well. So anyway, nice spot.
Nice.
I like it.
Nice.
Anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. First, we were going to kick off with specifically talking about the portfolio that we've created together since starting Cashflow Chronicles, and also looking a little bit through some of the dividends that we've been paid rather, over that time. So let me pull this bad boy up. Let me just make sure I don't have anything proprietary on this screen. I do not. So let me go.
The real question is, are we beating the market? That's
the real question. Yes, actually, and while we do that, actually, before I do that and share the screen, let me pull that up as well. The summary that you're kind of referring to, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say the year-to-date summary, because we don't have a year's worth of performance, but we do have the year-to-date performance. So we can do a new slide and share that. All right, now let me go ahead and share this. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say this is the blueprint that I kind of want to use to basically build out an ETF. I'm selling my New York apartment. Um, so I'm working on closing that. So eventually, once it closes, I'll have like a lot of additional cash that I
Yeah.
can use to basically be in the market a little bit more. So, combining everything together, it's just like I said, I'm going to be focusing hard on trying to build something out. So in the future,
You've
it's
had
gonna
that
be
for
as
like
important.
10 years, right? I mean, you have a lot of equity
Yeah.
in that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I have a ton of equity in it. So
Yeah, you're
it's
not going to
just
use that to buy the missus beep beep a nice little house. I'm going to get you in trouble.
we're always in the market for a house, but
Well,
the thing is like it's just the two of us. And right now the size that we have is fine. Like I thought about it and I was like, it's nice to have a house, but at the same time, like, do I really want to inherit like all these additional expenses, especially when like we have three bedrooms, right? And two baths in our condo. And I think I've gone to the middle room in like once in like 3 months.
yeah,
Because there's just like the office that I have, the bedroom that I have, the bathroom that's like right by my office slash bedroom.
right.
And then my wife is on the other side in the master, and she's just basically there. So
Yeah,
it's rare and then we have the giant living room, we have a good kitchen, so it's like for the size perspective it works. We don't have kids yet, we're working on that. I mean, I don't know, it seems that if it's almost like the way I would say real estate is like a sweater, right? If you have something too big it doesn't feel right, if you have something too small it doesn't feel right. So everything that we have right now just feels right, everything is
mhm,
good, the expenses are really low, so yeah.
yeah. It's an interesting thought as well because I bought this house, just for temporary, right? I even thought I was going to be in a situation where I'd eventually move to a new job or move countries again. And we talked about how I almost moved countries. In this role, I'll still be kind of going back and forth between an undisclosed European city, but it won't be that frequent. So I still probably will be on the lookout for a personal house as well. But you don't really know what you want in a home until you finally get one. So like now I kind of like have this, and I'm not going to sell it, right? And now they fixed all the taxes and everything like that, so my payments actually gone down a couple $100 a month, and I'm like, damn, I'm like I could actually rent this thing out and potentially break even or make some money. So that's pretty good because
Yeah.
in a couple of years, obviously, it'll definitely be making money. But the thought process is now that I know what I kind of want in a home, I'll be able to look for that. But yeah, it makes you think a little bit. It's like I like that statement. It's a sweater, right? It's too big. It's kind of like it's useless. But if it's too tight, then. But I agree with you as well. It's like I have this third bedroom. Obviously, I use the second bedroom as an office. That's where I'm reporting to you guys live from. But it's like
Yeah.
I've had a bed frame to be built over in that, but I just never get to it because I never see it because it's literally behind a closed door. I never go in that room ever. I might have been in it like 3 times, and once
I
was
don't
when
know
I
if
walked
I
in the
don't know
house.
if I don't know if you know this, but this is a walk-in closet. Like we
Yeah,
so one of the things is like we had two massive walk-in closets, and I remember my wife, I was telling her, I was like, I'm gonna turn this into an office. And she's like, what? Like that's a closet. And I was like, no, it's okay. Like I know like the size is gonna be good. So I had custom everything built out. Like it was really nice. Like now I really like it. It's like it feels like it's the size of a, like I wouldn't say like a full office, but it's like a big cubicle. And I have like
yeah.
an L-shaped desk. It's really good. I really like it. All the lighting setup is really good. The acoustics are
I
nice.
hear you. I don't understand. I honestly don't understand why my master bedroom closet is as big as it is, but that's a different story for
Yeah.
another day. When you told me that originally the first time, I was like, maybe I should do that with mine, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's just me right now. So eventually, if I'll probably end up getting a house with an actual office that has closing doors and something that's legit rather than it be a bedroom that I'm currently in right now. But anyway, to the portfolio. How about that? So
Yeah.
we're sitting around $2,100. I was just telling Mr. Patel we're in the beginning of the month. So when YouTube closes out in March, I'll be able to add what our volume is for that. So it should probably be in the 150 to 200 range. I honestly haven't been checking. So we'll add a couple $100 there. And then actually we're in the process of getting the Cashflow Chronicles channel monetized as well. So eventually, in the shorter term, medium term, we'll be moving over to there full time rather than, doing what we do here, which is stream on Map Money and then re-upload over there to keep the Chronicles alive. But to get our eyes into the portfolio, and Chris, interject as you see fit, I have it ordered in terms of total value first.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the largest holdings, Celsius, BPYPM, Telz, the largest three, that makes up about 65-70% of the portfolio. And the remaining 30%, Snow, Verizon, some cash, Rocket Lab, Dutch Bros, TQQQ, ABCL, and NEXT. But overall, we're up about 20%, which for the portfolio only being a couple months old, it's really not that bad.
Yeah. SPY is up what? SPY for year to date is up 9.7%. So we're beating the market.
Yeah. So as of yesterday, so I guess this isn't including today. So obviously we'd be down to probably a couple percent today, but so would the SPY, right? So this was as of yesterday. We're up about twice the S&P. So we're beating it by about 10%, which is pretty good.
Let's keep it there. Let's keep going, man. Let's keep going. I want to keep beating this S&P 500.
Yeah. So this is real though. So I guess you could see this is 20%. Well, this is total gain. So never mind. This doesn't include, some of the sales and stuff that we've done as well. But
yeah. What about the what is that thing called? The cumulative. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is all the dividends and stuff like that that we've kind of we've gotten to date all the way since November. So I didn't want to walk into the actual Fidelity website in case portfolio numbers and stuff started showing up. But you can see a couple things like, we're not talking big money, right? But you start seeing, you got some $6 things coming in from Tellurian. You got this $13 payment that we got from Brookfield. Mine's not nearly as big as yours, Chris, but it's not a competition. And then we also got some more interest from Brookfield over here as well. So it's doing pretty good in that respect. Some small dividends coming in, which is nice. Even the cash yielding off some love, which is nice.
Yeah. No, this is good. Like, remember, all of these dividends, they get invested back into the main fund. And so a lot of people, what happens is they look at purely companies from a stock perspective, where it's like we've got capital appreciation, and then the other side, you've got the other part of the appreciation, which is dividends that get reinvested back into a lot of these companies, right? So even if let's say you have a yield of 10% this year and the stock doubles and now the yield looks like it's only 5%, people forget that your cost basis is on that original amount, which means that now you've got a crap ton of income that's going to be coming in. And remember that cost basis is much lower. The question is, what are you going to do with that additional money? And how are you going to utilize that to build more on top of it? Because that's the thing. It's not about beating the S&P 500 one year. It's about beating it over consecutively over like a decade plus. That's when you get like, okay, these guys know what they're doing with their money. And the question is, have you beat the S&P 500 for the last 10 years?
10 years, definitely not. But the last several, yes. I have told this story many times about how I used to be strictly a dividend investor and I'd invest strictly for dividends and I wasn't really focused on total returns. And I have told people, maybe I haven't said it recently on here, but I hope people hear this, is I think you guys know I have a decently sized portfolio, but even dragging several percentage points over that time period, I have lost out on several $100,000 of just not participating in something as simple as just an index fund of the like S&P 500. And it's as simple as that, right? If you choose the wrong things and you think you know more than you think you do, and you aren't smart enough to know what you don't know, because there's a lot of stuff you don't know, but you have to get slapped in the face once or twice in the market to realize you're like, you get to a place where you start learning a year or two in, you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And you get smacked in the face. You're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. You lose confidence. then you start to recognize, you're like, okay, I learned from that. And then you start to recognize, hey, there's things that you don't know and you should just probably stay away from unless you truly deep dive and do your due diligence. Or there's things that you then realize, you're like, damn, I thought I knew a little bit, and I thought I knew it better than I actually do. And because of that, I made some stupid mistakes. And investing strictly in dividend income, for me in my early 20s, was one of those mistakes. And I hope people hear that, because I see a lot of people going down that path. It's tangible. You see, like, for example, you see these little dollar signs coming in. That feels fucking phenomenal, right? Like seeing that come in is phenomenal. But at the end of the day, sometimes it has a drag on the portfolio overall. You have to think the company is paying dividends out to people, most likely because they have no other better place to put that, or they're trying to siphon off because they're becoming more mature, right? Google doesn't pay a dividend. Facebook just started paying a dividend. You know, you have these companies that historically don't pay dividends because it's better to just reinvest back in the business. So I'm not saying dividends are bad, right? Just don't do dividends at all costs. And that's where I kind of got myself lost. I was chasing 6-7% yields, and try to find a sweet spot that makes you feel like you're in the.
I think what's unique is this time around, there's a combination of buying things with both great yield and capital appreciation, which is not common, at least not in my investing career. It hasn't been that common. So
Right.
I'm surprised to see that. The other thing is also to remember that, there's also dividend growth as well. So companies that can grow their dividends tend to do well over time versus those that are just purely based on today's dividend prices. So just, there's a lot of nuances here and there we could talk about, but overall, I think we're doing good in the portfolio. I think we are headed into some material weakness the next few weeks, primarily because of oil. If you remember, like, we had this discussion before you went on vacation that I was starting to get a little bit worried about oil. You remember that? Like how we went through it. And I think now, I don't know if you just saw what WTI did today, but WTI is, I think, at 85. Yeah, let's take a look real quick.
Let's see. Can I expand this? Here we go.
There we go.
Oh, you got it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have mine. It's not a problem.
Okay. So WTI just hit 85. Brent is at 89. I think it touched 90 earlier today. Let me see. It's crazy to see this. All of us, it actually went past Bonnie Light, then Louisiana Light. OPEC was, let me just look at all the charts. Hold on. So if you guys know, these are the different oils from around the world, and usually it's based on the locality. So if you go to WTI crude, this is what you would get from like in Texas with the Permian Basin, Permian Basin and everything else. So all the blends that come in would be WTI right there. So these are all the different prices of crude. Can you explain to me real quick, Matt, like, why are the prices so material? Is it because these are the delivery points? Is that
it's part delivery. It's also part quality of the oil. So let me just give people an idea, right? Oil is like a soda, right? You could have more syrup, you could have more carbonation in it. You can have, so that's part of what makes it up. There's so many different carbon chains within each individual crude. So you might have something that's really light, which generally speaking, West Texas Intermediate is rather light. And then you can have some stuff that's coming out of the Middle East that is, more ready strictly for refining. You can have stuff from Venezuela that's more sour. So it might have some more sulfur in it. So you have to do some more preparation in order to refine it. Stuff like West Canada Select, which is coming from the northern oil sands, etc., that's going to be at a discount as well because it's heavier, so it might not necessarily have as many components. For example, what you put in your car is anything between butane and heptane most of the time, C4 through C7, right? So those carbon chains that are in there, versus you have stuff that is like tar, things that we put into the plastics within, our soda bottles, etc. That they all go for different prices, right? So depending on what you're selling and how much refining it needs, the location, you're going to get different contracts for each. So, for example, during the pandemic, when everything was going negative, things were really bad for Western Canadian Select, WCS, because everything was being trained, right? So there wasn't many pipelines. Everything was, and that's part of why the Keystone XL pipeline was such a big deal, is because actually it was going to help the Canadians a good bit. It was going to be able to help transport oil from Canada into the United States and get it refined easier. But instead, you have all these trains that are importing anywhere, not all of it's being trained in, but a lot of it's being trained in. And so with that, it's pretty costly, so it ends up eating into the value of each individual oil barrel. But anyway, that's the difference between it. Places that have, it's like the same thing with natural gas right now. If you were to go to Japan, it's going to be $19 an MCF. If you go to the United States, it's less than $2 an MCF. That's part of it is based off of supply, demand, quality, all that sort of stuff. The components in it as well. And so it's a huge piece. Like some of the stuff that we produce out of the Gulf of Mexico, we laugh about it. We say you can put it directly in a gas tank, but really you could. Like it's so light that we get a premium for selling it. So what we see WTI trading for, we actually could sell for a couple dollars more just based on the fact that it's like you barely have to refine it to be able to make it into gasoline. So things like that really alter the price slightly.
Nice. So we can see here, we're just going to look at WTI because that's for the US. You can see that the prices are really, really climbing up. I mean, you look at basically what happened last year, and I feel like this is a repeat of what happened last summer. If you remember, price of oil was coming down all throughout the spring, and then the summertime hits, right? And we started to see that rise in oil prices, right? You remember that? And then the CPI came out right after that, and the CPI was coming out a little bit hot. And once the CPI was coming in hot, people were like, oh, wait, we're not going to get cuts this year. Remember Anthony Noto from SoFi was like, oh, we're going to get 2 cuts in 23. What happened? No cuts, right? Market went into a tizzy, sold off like crazy, and the peak of the sell-off was right here in the month of October. So the bottoming happened around October, I think the third or the fourth week of October. And that's where the best opportunities in the market were. And since then, you saw oil prices come down significantly, right? And once again, people were like, oh yeah, look, inflation's coming down. We're going to get cuts. And then if you remember this year, everyone's like, oh yeah, we're going to get 6 cuts. But the difference was this time we had this secular growth in since October. Remember here around this price. So we had growth in the market, forward looking, basically. What is that thing called? Like looking for cuts that would be coming in 24. Now we're at a point where valuations are higher and inflation is higher, which means that a lot of the expectations that we have, like a lot of people were expecting, first it was 6 rate cuts, now it's 3 rate cuts, and now it might actually be less than 1 rate cut, and probably maybe not any rate cuts if the current situation persists. So as the expectations of cuts goes down, I think valuations are going to reset a little bit, right? And when valuations reset, I think the market is just going to have a lot more volatility going forward. And you might see a few more sell-off days like we've just seen. And that's normal. That's healthy. It's not anything bad. Economic data is one of those things where it's like an art form now to figure out what's happening. But from what I can see, inflation is reaccelerating. And I'm sure that the Fed is probably not happy about that, and one of the main culprits, in my opinion, is the price of oil, because as oil prices rise, oil, even if you don't think it's that necessary, it feeds into everything, whether that's lubricants, whether that's logistics, transporting goods and services across the world. You've got plastics, you've got just all sorts of things. So as gas prices go up, the consumer is then squeezed a little bit harder, and so the price of everything gets a little bit more expensive. And a lot of the companies, they pass on that cost to consumers via price increases of goods and services, which means once again inflation starts to go up. So I think right now the administration needs to figure out how to mitigate this. And I don't think they have the reserves in the SPR to do it. They were able to pull that rabbit out of the hat last year, but they can't do that again.
Yeah, I think this month it should be okay, right? Because this is a year-over-year chart, right? So you can kind of see, on the one side, on the left-hand side, things are hanging out at the $80 range, and now kind of getting to the 85. So when you go from March to April, right, those CPIs will probably be okay. But where I think Chris is talking about is when you get into the May timeframe, May you started dipping into the low 70s, and now you're starting to see it creep up, to the 85s. And do we stop at 90? Who knows, right? I mean, generally speaking, as Chris alluded to, oil is very cyclical in its own, but then also the demand is also much higher in the summertime. So Chris is kind of, as he alluded to, you can kind of see this peak in the middle of the graphic here. So the next month or so of data might not have too much of an impact from oil, but Chris is right. I mean, once you get to the May timeframe, if prices persist here, they go to the $90, 85 to $90 range, there is going to be a pretty, 20 to 25% increase year over year in just oil costs. Now it depends on what that is. That could be a drag of, a third of a percent, or it could be a half a percent, but regardless, it's going to be a drag on CPI for sure. And so that's something to potentially consider. But I guess once, that might be for May, June, July. But as you get into kind of the middle months, it also depends on where do we go from here, in the next, say, 6 months or so for oil prices. If they kind of hang out, then, oil will kind of stay flat again, in terms of year over year increases. So this gets you to think about how all these different components, right? Because then you have housing that plays into it. Then you have rents that play into it, and food, all that sort of matters. This is just one of them. And I'm not sure, Mr. Patel, maybe you do, how much, say, oil cost plays into CPI and PPI. Because that might be, something to consider. If it's like 10%, then obviously it's going to be more significant than I think people might realize.
I mean, it's hard to determine 100% like what the total impact is going to be, because see, I think a lot of people just look at oil and they think, oh, gasoline, so it's transport people from one place to another. And it's like, no, there's so many use cases for the carbon products that come out of oil and natural gas that when prices of feedstocks go up, you've got this tremendous increase in raw goods. The one thing I'll just quickly say is, I don't know if you saw this, but do you know why production had dropped off so much in January compared to last year? So this is EIA. They track all the oil production in the United States. You can see here, we've really done a good job of, producing a crap ton of oil, but January was really weak. Like, it was actually lower than last year. When, if you look at December, it was pretty stable. So we were at about 3.2 million barrels. I think, is it per day? No, 13.25 million barrels
A day.
per day. Yeah. So why this giant drop? Almost a million. I mean, less than a million, but still, like, why this giant drop? Seasonality?
It might just be, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Short
Yeah.
and long. There's a lot of reasons, right? Is there issues associated with keeping the pumping stations up, keeping the compression stations for, the pipelines up, and that might mean if you don't have the appropriate stations and people are now getting so much about not flaring, then would they shut in production partly? And that could be part of it. I don't know. Also, just to be very blunt, there is a good chart that a lot of people hold, which is looking at U.S. production, which you were just showing up above, in combination with rig count. And what you have seen, and as you kind of see that large drop off in 2020 for rig count, for oil production in the United States specifically, that coincides a lot with how many rigs are at bay. So it's actually really interesting to kind of see the chart of oil production in the United States versus rig count,
Yeah.
because what you'll end up seeing is actually we're able to do a lot more with fewer rigs. And so it's like people are actually laying down rigs, but oil production is still going up, which generally speaking means that we're either becoming better at drilling wells or getting more production per foot for each well, and being more efficient. So it's like we're using less capital in the business, but we're getting more oil out of it, which is pretty impressive. People are drilling longer laterals. People are doing a lot of things that are able to
Yeah.
keep those production numbers up. But, if you cut back too quickly, you'll notice, and there's a lot of what we call cohorts, and you guys probably know cohorts depending on, you know, them really well with Wingstop, right? When you look at Wingstop new stores that are coming online in 2018, 2019, what's that revenue stream look like? If you look at the cohorts associated with like the Permian or something like that, and what the new wells come on as, it's like pretty much the decline, with the brand new wells that were brought on the last 2 years is all up front. So 50% of the decline of those wells is coming up within the first 2 years. And so you have like this big treadmill that you have to continue to drill. But anyway, short answer
Yeah.
to your question, I don't know why the hell it dropped in January. I didn't do enough research. Our production facilities did okay in January. We had to shut in one of the facilities for some riser stuff, but I can't get into too much detail about that.
My only thing is usually there's some kind of weather related event that takes a lot of production offline for some sustainable period of time. Like when we've had what is that thing called? Hurricane season. Usually that's when you'll see production starting to like drop off,
Yeah.
but there hasn't been anything as far as I can
It was
tell.
pretty chilly here in Texas in January. So
Was it? Okay.
yeah, I mean there was a few weeks where everyone was kind of, so that might have messed with compression stations and caused some issues, considering Texas is one of the bigger producing states. But also, I mean, you think about it, North Dakota is a pretty decent state at production as well. They produce close to 1 million barrels or so, and
The
if it gets cold
Bakken,
up there,
the
they're
Bakken, right? The
yeah,
Bakken.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to
All
think. I
right.
mean, and also it's compression when it's really hot out as well is tough.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see what production, like oil production from OPEC, like what that's been looking like lately, because I know that they've constantly had what is that thing called, production cuts and output cuts to boost the price of oil. Like most of these countries, they need oil between I mean, because their country relies on so much oil like revenues as a source of income, they need about $80 to break even. Like I know the Saudis, they need about $75 to 85 just to break even on all their social spending. Anytime it dips below that, they have to start reaching into their reserves to spend money on social programs. So the key is at this point, like what is the happy medium for these guys?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I guess to give people some context, right? It's not to say that like Saudi Aramco itself is struggling at $80, right? They're making money hand over fist, but a lot of that money goes directly to fund the kingdom, right? It's the kingdom of Saud. Think about the kingdom over there, really just trying to make sure that their citizens are happy, paying for education, dental, healthcare, etc. That's where Chris is talking about the social spending, like Chris alluded to. It's a different way of how things work. It's like as if we were to take some of the profits from Apple and Google and be able to supplement some of our lifestyles, right? It's just a different way and culture in how the government works over in the Middle East. Not to say that it's better or worse. It's just the way that things are done over there. But that's also partly reason why you're seeing them try to diversify, like the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, the PIF, investing in stocks and other things that are able to help attract tourism, like the Line City that they're trying to create to help attract tourism. And you're also seeing a lot of investments from like ADNOC and many other Middle Eastern nations, like Qatar Petroleum as well, is really starting to invest in outside of the Middle East. to try to diversify some of their revenue streams. Some of them being renewables, some of them just being other industries as well. So it's pretty interesting to kind of look at that as a case study to see, anyway, just some food for thought.
Yeah. So I'm also looking at the other producers, to see like what kind of production they're, because I mean Venezuelan oil's been on the decline since not Maduro's administration, since what's his face? Chavez's administration. They pretty much dude, that's the sad part. Venezuela right now, we have so many asylum seekers coming to the United States from Venezuela. And the funny thing is, if you go back, and this is not like a short time, this is less than 20 years. Well, I think it might be over 20 years now. Venezuela used to be the richest country in South America. They have the most oil reserves in the entire world. I mean, yes, it's heavy and it's sour, but in terms of like total volume, they just have massive, massive amounts of oil. It just goes to show when you adopt a policy of socialism, it can really destroy you and your economy. And so Venezuela right now is sitting on all this oil and all this oil wealth, and yet they can't utilize it, and basically their people have turned into not refugees, asylees in other countries. Isn't it sad, man?
It is. For people that may or may not know, I lived in Trinidad, which at its shortest point was about 6 miles away from Venezuela. And so I saw a lot of boats coming in. Whether they were legal or not, I don't know. But I had a decent view of some of the shipping channels and saw a lot of folks coming in from what it looked like to be Venezuela. And saw a lot of them, and they were just trying to make a living, trying to get anything that they could to be able to get back. But yeah, I talked to a lot of friends when I was down in Trinidad about how they used to vacation and go on shopping trips in Venezuela and how it used to be such a great tourist location. And I still think that there is some of that. All right. I think they're slowly starting to get out of some of the crisis that they've been in over the past, decade or so. But I still think that they're trying to climb themselves back up to the glory days, what they had in the late 90s, early 2000s, of being this, hugely wealthy country that, could survive, and
Well,
do extreme, not survive, flourish, right? Like some of the other countries that have oil and gas have been able to do.
so here's the problem. So it's not socialism per se that destroyed it, but what tends to happen with socialism is that it becomes very uniparty like. And if you look at the story of how the Venezuelan oil industry kind of got turned upside down, a lot of it was because you had this guy come in and say, these guys are the problem. These guys are the rich fat cats. They're the problem. And then to get rid of them, it was like, okay, let's get rid of them. They got rid of the wealthy people that control the oil and all this other stuff. The problem is they also got rid of now anyone that opposed them politically. And once you start removing people from that position because they stand against you, even if your policies are stupid, that means that all you're really left with is a bunch of yes men. So if you look at like how the Venezuelan crisis ended up happening was you had the Chavez people, they took over political power, and then they started to kind of use crony capitalism. You ever heard of that term, crony capitalism? You know what that is, right? Where basically anyone who's favoring you, you put them in charge. And even though technically they're socialists, that's what they did. They used a form of crony capitalism where they just put their own people in charge. And these people were wildly unqualified, but they were loyal. So what happens? All their production facilities goes to shit. And now you're sitting on, and then now with the US and all these other people, they put sanctions on you. It's crazy, man. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw this small documentary. If you have a minute, we can watch it real quick. Do you have a minute?
For you, anything.
All right, let's just quickly watch this. Even though this is Al Jazeera does have some really good things once in a while. So let's put this on 1 second. It's like a little. We're probably gonna demonetize, so just for warning you.
The economy is going into a spiral of dysfunctionality.
Venezuela has, of today, the highest inflation in the world.
Venezuelans today cannot eat. You see people eating from the garbage.
Hospitals that have massive deaths of newborns, and there is no access to medication.
A cycle of violence and street protest.
Chavez was seen very much so as, a man of the people, the poorer people, and he identified with them, and he loved them, and they loved him.
He was a very
I think every eventual asshole starts off as the benevolent dictator. You ever see that? Like Saddam Hussein, benevolent dictator. Gaddafi, benevolent dictator. Every one of these guys that comes to power, they usually come in saying, "Oh, we're the good guys, like we're here to help you. We're here," and then they eventually flip the script, But I just find it so funny that people keep falling for this all the time, and even in the U.S., I think so many people fall for this, where the good guys, they come in saying, "Oh, you know what? We are going to have policies that are non-discriminatory. It's going to help the poor." But everything they do is counter to their best interest.
It's under the guise of helping the people, and unfortunately, it's overshadows some of the ulterior agendas of what's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
popular. He was very imaginative, but Chavez had a base of oil. He had a cash cow that never a leader in Venezuela had before.
When Chavez first came to power, oil was at roughly $7 to $9 a barrel. But by 2004, 2005, we're looking at oil price per barrel lifting at over $100 a barrel.
He has power and he has money. And so he decides new forms of social policies that can distribute the oil revenues in a more massive way downwards towards those that more need it, toward the poor.
Esta nuestra opción de darle poder al pueblo y especialmente a los más pobres, a los más débiles para que se levanten. Esta nuestra opción de construir un modelo económico desarrollado, moderno, productivo, diversificado, desarrollar al país.
So he went to Cuba, and Cuba came up with a bunch of new social programs, massive new social programs for healthcare, for access to food, and for scholarships.
We have a whole
Who does that remind you of here in the U.S.? I'm not going to go political. But who does that remind you? Like all of these things, these are the promises that are being made right now in the United States. And the reason why I bring this up is because if we don't change ourselves to be a little bit better, this could be our fate. So all the stuff that you're seeing right here, who does that show? Like, whatever. Let's keep going.
whole raft of these so-called misiones, the social programs, which give people citizenship rights, identity cards, access to job training, access to breakfast clubs, university systems. So this is a very comprehensive effort to deliver basic social services.
What this is doing, though, is essentially still using oil as that redemptive quality to bring social change, while bringing social change, deepening the dependence on oil, and he can do this while the prices of oil are high.
The whole strategy of Chavismo initially was about diversification of the economy, reducing Venezuela's vulnerability to oil price bust. And in the initial Chavista model, this was hinged very much around processes of land reform, trying to reduce Venezuela's dependence on agricultural imports and food imports. What happens after the presidential elections of 2006 is that Chavez is bringing oil straight back into the center of Venezuela's economic model.
He had a high price of oil and he had access to finance. He could borrow as if it was going out of fashion. So he decided that that was the moment to radicalize the process.
Todo aquello que fue privatizado, nacionalícese.
The Venezuelan government begins to embark on a very ad hoc, very clumsy process of nationalization, nationalizing really big, heavy state assets. So we're talking about the electricity sector, the oil sector, the telecommunications sector.
He also went out and bought the Banco de Venezuela from the Spanish bank Santander. They went out and bought all the cement companies.
The country lost most of its private business. People were prosecuted. Their assets were taken by the state. Chavez thought that didn't matter because he had resources to import.
We're importing to medicines, we're importing clothes, we're importing cars, we're importing everything. And we destroy the production capacity of the country. It really doesn't have an economic model more than.
Once again, you see that here in the United States, right? Where it's like, let's just import everything. We don't need to produce. We just need to keep just importing things. Like that's right there, one of the major flaws. I'm glad that after COVID, a lot of people in the United States woke up to the idea that we can't fundamentally be beholden to outside the United States for every piece of, a good that we have, that we need to actually make things here in this country to sustain our own economy. Right. So a lot of what you're seeing here is exactly what the problems are when you have such a personality figure come into power and basically say, oh yeah, I'm going to nationalize everything. And once you nationalize everything, what do you get after that? You get crony capitalism.
Then bring back everything to the state control.
He's trying to understand what socialism looks like in Venezuela. And that's a big challenge. Again, no one has done that yet. So at one level, does it mean creating parallel institutions?
You have basically a parallel state structure. Instead of reforming ministries and institutions, simply creating parallel structures such as the misiones themselves. So you've got high levels of expenditure on bureaucracy, on duplication of responsibility. All of this is becoming very onerous and expensive. The only way that this model can be sustained for Venezuela is through foreign borrowing.
They used the period of the oil boom from 2004 to 2014 to sextuple the public debt.
Once again, whose public debt is rising at one of the fastest paces in the world? Us here in the United States. Like, how do you feel seeing this and seeing all the parallels that are happening? I mean, outside of the privatization, because that hasn't happened yet, thank God. But how the national debt is climbing, all the spending on social programs because it makes it's supposed to help the poor. Do you see the parallels behind these two things happening?
I see parallels, but I don't know if I should or should not comment.
Okay.
As oil prices went up, Venezuela spent it all. They didn't set any money aside in a sovereign wealth fund and a rainy day fund. So they've got money in case things go down. Everybody in the oil industry knows oil prices are cyclical.
Chavez gets sick. He gets cancer. Meanwhile, many things begin to unravel.
Capital markets said, these guys are borrowing as if it was going out of fashion. So they sort of started to stop lending to the country.
The economy starts to go down. People begin to say, wait a minute, before it's all gone, I'm going to get my piece of it.
Now, when Chavez had first come to power, he had said that essentially there was going to be a hard hand, an iron fist against these problems of corruption. But the reality was that absolutely nothing was done. So the end result is kind of decay of the Chavista Bolivarian Revolution, and a state which is becoming more and more indebted.
The biggest sucker in Venezuelan history is the guy who's going to follow Chavez as president. And that's exactly what happened.
Maduro has inherited a legacy of oil dependence at a period when Venezuela has gone bust, and at a time when the oil price has gone bust.
In 2014, the economy was doing poorly, but as of June 2014, the price of oil started to go down.
When the oil price started dropping, the government had a severe debt and did not have enough dollars to buy the food imports and the medicine imports and all the good imports that it was buying before. And so from one day to the other, the scarcity overwhelmed the country. The basic food, milk, rice, soap, toothpaste, these things disappeared.
Venezuela's total stock of foreign debt is about $150 billion. It's seeking to try and renegotiate with bond holders, but the problem is that these sanctions that the US has imposed make it very difficult for Venezuela to roll over its debt.
The collapse of economic activity that started in 2014 worsened in 2015 and then went down the drain in 2016 and 2017 makes this period from 2013 onwards the largest recession in the Western Hemisphere history, almost twice as large as the Great Depression of the US.
Maduro has simply not addressed any of the problems or the legacy that he inherited from President Chavez.
And that's been very difficult for people who are not in that elite, like loyalist circle around Maduro, profiting and benefiting and living the high life because they don't have to worry about going shopping every day or paying their bills. You know, the people actually in the street who are experiencing the dramatic and detrimental effects of the economic crisis are the ones who are saying, wait a minute, something's not right here. You know, and in the end, you know, Maduro can wipe his hands clean of as much as he wants, but he is the president. So he becomes the one who is responsible.
And the reason why I bring this up, and even though we're trying to do more finance related content, I kind of want to show people and highlight that a lot of governmental policies can create great economies and they can also destroy great economies. The good thing that we have here in the US that prevents a lot of what happened to Venezuela to happen to us for now is that we're a much more diversified economy, right? So we have both goods and services that we produce. We've got a very healthy tech sector. We've got oil and natural gas. We've got great land resources. So we've got a lot of great industries that keep building the next generation of goods and services that the world wants. The key, though, is that if we allow policies that come in that become very detrimental to our way of life, we could end up like Venezuela one day. Do I think it's going to happen in my lifetime? I don't think so. I think there's too many safeguards that have been built into the system for us to collapse economically for now. But if we're not careful, we could be dealing with a very similar situation like this eventually. Any opinions?
I think somebody said it pretty well in the chat. I mean, there's some similarities to what we're observing between the two countries. You know, what happened, you know, over the course of the last 20 years in Venezuela to the United States. But I think the United States, like you stated, has other industries in which we have exported across the world to really help and sustain our economy. You know, so if something singularly like oil price were to decrease, you know, natural gas, etc., were to decrease, we're not totally reliant on those things to help keep our lights on in that respect. And so, you know, a prime example of this is all the American goods that I saw when I was living in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, yes, they had some things that they were importing from South America, but there was still Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Lay's potato chips, Colgate palm olive, all those sorts of Tide, all these things that are American companies are exporting to, be able to help these people live and continue their daily lives. And this is a country that's literally on the border of South America, at its closest point, 6 to 7 miles away from Venezuela. So I'm sure you'll see the same if you go to, Europe and stuff of the like. You'll see American products all over, right? I see our UK or European employees wearing Polo Ralph Lauren all the time. And yes, those items might be made outside of the United States, but they're American companies that help distribute and have the logistics aspects to be able to create those things. So, it might not necessarily be made in America, but the products and the companies that create the products, or at least the IP, are American born. Google, Amazon, all these things are, from a technology perspective, are being exported outside of the United States and helping create things. I mean, Android is probably one of the greatest products that is being used globally, right? And same with iPhone, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And yes, some of those products are going to be made in Korea or China, but they're American IP products, right? And those help provide income back to the United States. A lot of these companies that we're talking about on a day-to-day basis are bigger than most economies around the world, right? When you think about the GDPs of most nations, you get a couple, out of the top five, you start getting below $1 trillion in GDP, right? So, it doesn't take much to climb down to see that the Magnificent Seven, we're talking about that, it's literally larger than it's larger than Japan, it's larger than the UK, it's larger than probably most of the EU combined, if you talk about the Magnificent Seven, as a whole. So you start to recognize similarities between the two in terms of the policies and what's kind of going on, debt, etc. But it is different to an extent as well. And so I agree with you. I see similarities. Is it going down the right path? Maybe not. Maybe in 2025 things will be different, but or at least the ship might move slightly differently depending on who's elected and what goes on there and what policies start to get implemented. But I continue to scratch my head a little bit when people start to say America's going downhill. I see it, I see cracks in the armor, but then you start to think about the monsters that America has created and that are literally driving the world forward, not just America forward, but the world forward. And you start to say, like, all right, is it the 1950s when America, was literally the number one superpower, nobody was even close, and we're helping rebuild America and rebuild the world, etc. after World War II? Maybe not, but at the same time, it's like I feel like maybe because we don't see it as physically and it's more globalized, that it might not necessarily feel as
I'm
as
glad
right.
I'm glad that you said that it feels globalized. That's one of the keys that I think, like, I wouldn't call them I'd say, the new world elite. They don't see themselves tied to it fundamentally to any one country. They see themselves as like this, in basically they can do whatever they want, they can go wherever they want, their money is fungible anywhere. So it's not like, the only economic benefit that you're going to get from Colgate palm olive oil, let me do another one, like Coca-Cola, is just going to be only Americans get the benefit. You have shareholders around the world that get the benefit of capital appreciation for Coca-Cola. So it's not like, even though it's an American company, the holders and the ultimate beneficiaries are people outside of the United States as well. So as an example, contrary to Venezuela, you look at Norway, right? Norway had a very similar situation to Venezuela, where they had massive oil reserves in the North Sea. But unlike these idiots down in down in South America who just basically spent that money on social spending. What did Norway do? Even though Norway is technically like a very socialist country, they're not a socialist country, but they have very socialist like tendencies. They actually took their oil wealth and put it in the S&P 500, right? If you look at Norges Bank right now is the largest sovereign wealth fund in the entire world. Like I'm not Norges Bank itself, but the entity that controls Norges Bank. So the sovereign wealth fund of Norway, I'm not sure if people know this. Did you know this by any way?
Which one?
That how much what is that thing called? How much money they have?
Oh yeah, it's over $1 trillion. Yeah.
So right here, let me just show you guys. This they have
The
a
Norway
clock.
Public Investment, the sovereign wealth fund. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have
Yeah.
this in kronar, but let me see in dollars how much money that they have. Okay.
I think you divide it
have
by 6.5.
no, it's right here. They actually bring it down in dollars. So unlike Chavez and Maduro in Venezuela, what did they do with their money? They started off in 1998 with $28 billion. They kept taking the money that they were generating, reinvesting it back into the stock market. Look at what it's worth right now, $1.5 trillion. And the total population of Norway, I think, is like 7 million. So they have per person. Hold on one second. Norway total population. Yeah, like 5 point. That's even less than I thought. So 5.4 million people. If you take that and you divide it, how much wealth that they have? Hold on. Norway wealth per person. Let's see. I saw this like last time. Just based on their sovereign wealth fund, they're literally stacked. They are so stacked. They are, hold on. Block. Pause on the site.
It's a lot of money, Chris.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not going to find it right here, but basically.
But it makes me think,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, going back to the United States policies, it's like, think about if we were to actually utilize that money appropriately. I think about how, and maybe it would inflate the asset values, right? Because you would have the United States investing within, but it's like, I think about Social Security and how much money goes into Social Security and everyone's paycheck every single month. And my thought process is, if you just invested it on the S&P 500, you know, how much value that would generate, right? We wouldn't be talking about Social Security actually going bankrupt. I just think it's very interesting how, you know, I just don't understand how these tax dollars are actually within the United States being utilized appropriately. And I recognize it's easier said than done, right? I mean, there's so many millions upon billions of dollars that go out of Social Security to actual citizens that use it to live. You know, my mother being one of them. She gets a check every single month because she paid into it for so long. But the fact that we can't say that we have something that's very strong after so many people have been paying into this for over 50 years, since I guess was it the FDR days that started the Social Security? I mean, it's been the 1900s, right? It hasn't been around for that long. But the fact that we continue to say it's bankrupt, you know, it makes me think, like, I just don't understand, how is the United States not better wealth management providers? And is it strictly designed to eventually fail? Or do we really just have people that are that, I don't want to say incompetent running the government, but is it designed to fail? I'll just say, versus is it actually set up for success?
No, I think what it is that Norway has a bank account, we have a credit card. You know, just think of it that way. That's the best explanation I could give. Norway takes their money, puts it into a bank account, and then over time, slowly, you know, uses the debit function. Where
I also
the money
don't think that this
up.
is a smart idea. I do not think that most taxpayers should manage their own.
No, not at all.
They would
That's
just spend
not
it.
a good idea. Not a good idea. Whereas the US, we have an unlimited credit card. Just think about that. That's the way I would phrase it. The Norwegians have a bank account with a debit card. We have a credit card. We can basically just keep swiping anywhere we go. And so what happens is now every administration comes in and says, oh, you know what? I'll just swipe a little bit more too. And right now the card's not getting declined anywhere. So everyone's like, oh, we're rich. I'm rich. What do I need to worry about? My credit card works everywhere I go. $100 meal, swipe the credit card. You know, I want a nice Louis bag, swipe the credit card. That's what the US has been doing. The problem is eventually people are going to say, hey, listen, man, no more, you know, so we need to be careful with that. I would say in terms of like fiscal responsibility, this is one of those things that is a big vulnerability for the United States if we don't address it eventually. And the best way to address it, and this is something that you know, some people would agree, some people would disagree, is we have to make sure that we keep growing our economy. The problem that tends to happen is when you throw good money after good money and the next generation of things get developed, it's great. Like all the money that was invested in the moon, in the rocket, you know, in the space program in the 60s and 70s, that ended up giving dividends to the United States for the next 50 years. You remember that? Like all the moon stuff, like all the technology that had to be researched in order to get us to the moon, semiconductors, microchips, what is that thing called? All these defense tech, all the stuff that we had, all of that stuff was developed in Silicon Valley. Why? Because a lot of that funding came for the space program. That was our biggest thing. We didn't just spend money on dumb things like, oh yeah, let's just spend the money on random things. Or we didn't have tons of proxy. Well, we did have tons of proxy wars. So it's just one of those things that like a lot of that capital that was invested in the 60s and 70s ended up paying us back in the way into the future when it came to all this technology development. And so it's kind of the same thing right now where it's almost like we should be investing more in science and technology rather than art history. Like, does it make sense for an 18-year-old to get a $200,000, you know, debt saddled on top of them with, you know, with public sponsored student loans, and they have a degree in art history that they'll never utilize? Like, that doesn't make sense. But in terms of math and science, like, hey, you have a prospect student who's doing really well. Yeah, you kind of want to invest in them a little bit to see where they could end up in the future, you know, because I think the tangible benefit is much longer. So
I think, you know, I have this conversation with my sister quite a bit because she's a teacher, and I know she's a phenomenal teacher, so it's not a hit on that. But I think what we actually teach kids these days, and specifically about, you know, how we teach them to be employees rather than be employers. And I think that that's part of a problem as well. You've lost a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit. And it's not to say that it's completely gone, right? Because we still see massive amounts of ingenuity going on in this country. And we're importing a lot of it as well. So don't think that it's strictly American born, right? I think it's partly the fact that we as a society have been born off of the ingenuity of our past, but I think we have that land of opportunity still but I feel like now it's left to most of the legal immigrants that come that really take advantage a lot of that. I see mostly really successful folks from Indian descent, Chinese descent, really taking advantage of it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, once people get established, they kind of get lazy. They get to a place where they have enough money and they have enough of a lifestyle where they're just fighting to kind of maintain that lifestyle. And in America, it's pretty easy to get to that point. And so, you know, where I see a lot of people succeeding is people that haven't been indoctrinated into this normal society of, okay, just work your 9 to 5, go home. And, you know, you have these people like Elon Musk that came here and is just like, there's so many opportunities to do well and do things, where he started creating computer programs and, you know, SpaceX and helping get Tesla off the ground, not because, you know, of the potential profits, but because he wanted to change the world. And I think it's pretty interesting that you have to import people from other countries rather than strictly Americans who are born here being able to take advantage of that. And I'm glad we've taken advantage of the ability to bring people in legally. because it's been a huge story for the past 200 some years, bringing people across for the land of opportunity to be able to fill out their dreams. And I hope it continues. I hope it's not destroyed by illegal immigration. I love immigrants. I'm a product of immigration myself. And so, I don't think immigration is a bad thing. I work with a lot of people, and the smile on their faces at work when we see somebody that is there on a visa and then they come into work and say, I'm a citizen now, and the smile on their face. And actually the funny part is who they vote for before and after they become a citizen. It's pretty funny, but that's a different story. We
just have to watch this really quickly because I really want to, like, when I saw this, I couldn't help but laugh, actually. Let's just watch this real quick. Hold on.
Explain to me how I have 2 degrees. I have 2 degrees. Oh, and a certificate. A little extra, right? I have a certificate. May not be a master's, but it's something extra along with the 2 degrees, I'm trying to apply for jobs right now, and the thing is that the only person I have responding to me is a man from a tech company saying, hey, you want to answer some customer service problems? You want to answer some customer service calls? No, Bart, I don't want to answer your calls. No offense, but I'm a little more qualified. Looking down at these, and I'm looking at them, and I'm kind of wondering. I'm like, what was this for again? Oh, I don't know.
It's just, I see this sense of entitlement. Like, first of all, someone offered you a job, okay? It's in customer service. I granted customer service is not the most glamorous thing. But at the end of the day, you're going to be serving someone. That's how a job works. Whether you serve a boss, whether you serve clients, or you serve customers, right? The key is learning these interpersonal skills that develop you into a better employee, and then you raise awareness of your talents, and then you go further up in your career, right? And the one thing that I find shocking is that people believe that a college degree is what sets you apart from the other people looking to get into different positions. And I remember this is the conversation that I had with an ex-girlfriend who was a junior in college. I had already graduated. And so she was just partying. She was a great time and stuff. And I said, look, you should probably, your college has really good internship programs. Like, they have connections to all these companies on Wall Street with all sorts of things. While you're in college, you should take advantage of that and join an internship. And basically I gaslighted her into applying for an internship, right? And so she got an internship at Mizuho Bank as a HR, because that was going to be her profession, HR. So she ended up doing that. And dude, her bosses loved her. They loved the great work she did. 2 years later, after she graduated, she had multiple offers from multiple places. Why? Because when she went in there, she already had experience. Within 5 years, she became like a head of HR. And after that, she became like a director of HR. And then she was able to go for her master's that was paid by her job to get further education. And now she's doing extremely well. The thing is, there were people in her cohort that were in the same what is that thing called, degree program? They didn't do an internship. After college, they're like, oh, here's my degree. And they would say, oh, what's your experience like? Right? And they'd be like, oh, I don't have any experience. I just have this degree. So what sets you apart from the other new grads? And that's the thing. Like, people have to realize that you really have to, like, hustle, put your time in. And it doesn't take a lot of time for people to recognize that you're a hardworking, talented person. And the funny thing is, I had a similar experience where I really busted my hump the first 2 years out of school, but then that set the tone for the rest of my career, where people were actually just recruiting me. People would come to me like, hey, Chris, listen, I know you work here, but I have this opportunity at this hospital system. It's got more pay, blah, blah, blah. Come here. I'll promote you to supervisor. Okay, cool. Went there, became a supervisor. Hey, listen, you're doing really good work as a supervisor. You should be a manager. Okay, put me in a manager role. You know, and it becomes such an easy thing once you've set yourself up. So like my wife right now, she's a freaking rock star at her profession. So everyone is always like, hey, why don't you come here? Why don't you come here? She's got multiple job offerings all the time. Now, why is that happening? Is because one, she has experience, and two, is because she's a hard worker, and three, now there's people within that industry that know her, that actually boost her up, boost her reputation up. And I'm guessing that's the same thing with you too, Matt. You're not walking around looking for handouts like, oh, please give me a job, please give me a promotion. It's like, no, this guy knows what he's doing. His work speaks for his for him. He's a high caliber employee. So people open doors for you rather than the other way around. Because we spoke about this, you know. What's your advice to everyone who's in college right now in a degree program in a very similar thing to your situation?
Well, I think you hit on a lot of good things, right? Something that like sounds really simple, but I hear people say, but it's really true if you sit and ponder on it. Being rich is hard. Being poor is hard. Choose your hard, right? I mean, you can live life being poor, you know, and it's not all about money, right? I think there's studies out there that state once you get to a certain amount of wealth, whether it's close to the six-figure mark per annum, it really doesn't change your quality of life too much. But I think the thing that people hear is go to college, go to college, go to college, and then they go to college for something that doesn't add value to the workplace. And it's all it really is just adding value to the workplace. Like you stated, you're always working for somebody. I work for everybody in this world to help provide oil and gas, right? That's my purpose, right? My purpose is to help people. I wake up every day helping people. That's why I do these podcasts. That's why I do these, wake up every day to help provide energy for the world. That's how I view my purpose in life. And so if you can't wake up and say, well, what am I providing to the world? What is my purpose? And being able to fulfill that purpose, you know, you're not going to be doing too hot, right? And you're going to be struggling your entire life. You have to figure out something that people need or want, right? Just like, you know, it's not to say that you can't be in a trade. Tradespeople are very well needed and they get paid very well, being a plumber, being an electrician, being, you know, a contractor, to be able to do carpentry in people's homes. Those guys, if you're able to work on your own, create your own business, can do extremely well. I know many people that have made phenomenal businesses for themselves, being plumbers. One of my best friends is setting up to take over his dad's plumbing business. Good carpenter. You know, one of my dad's best friends was a carpenter and created a great business for himself. Always had work. You know, you don't necessarily need to go to college, but what you need to do is think smarter, not harder. And I think a lot of times people will just go to college for very useless degrees. And I think you gave a very good piece of context. Even if you do have a useless degree, or a degree that might not necessarily differentiate yourself from like an engineer or something of the like, that internship thing is something that I stumbled upon my junior year, and is what really landed me my current job. And I don't think it's talked about enough. Like, I think college is great, but it's like, it's so open-ended that, you know, there's a piece that you kind of just get left to your own devices. And sometimes you can get lost. And I saw a lot of people get lost. You know, people say drop out of engineering to just do, you know, super simple, you know, basic degrees of arts rather than sciences. And it's not to say that that's a bad thing. Hell, one of my goals in life is to have my kids be artists, be musicians, because they don't have to necessarily work if they don't want to. They can focus on specifically, you know, doing those sorts of things. But I love numbers. I love providing value for people. I love, you know, being purposeful and helpful for folks. That's just in my nature. And if you're not that way and you're sitting there being like, oh, my degree doesn't get me this, to get me that. Like you stated, Chris, like I get emails all the time about people reaching out to me. They see my profile on LinkedIn. They say, here's this job, here's that job. You know, it's very interesting. And I think another piece is you can't just work hard on your job, because very often you'll work for one person, right? And that person's your current boss. What you have to do, and something that I think has actually helped me extremely well in my career thus far, is I don't have the best presentation skills. I'll be honest. Amit is probably somebody that I could aspire to learn a lot more from. But compared to the average human being, about being able to public speak and being able to put on a presentation and present ideas, which I've been able to thankfully hone in on and do a lot better with over time through YouTube, has excelled me in my career. When it comes to the anxiety piece of having to present, I'm like, I didn't really prepare for this presentation, but they asked me to present last minute. It's like, I do it all the time. I literally do it, a couple times a week, where I get in front of a group of people that, could look at my products, most of the time, thousands of people that look at, the content that we create. And it's like, I do it every night. So why is this any different? And the ability for me to have the confidence going in and working on myself to make sure that I'm a better presenter overall, know more about business, being able to provide value to the workplace, recognize risks, and not just investments, but in the workplace, because I work in a very investment specific driven industry. That all plays very well with what I do. And I think that helps me, with respect to climbing and being able to focus. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Internships are a big thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. And also, just recognizing that the American school system is not set up for entrepreneurs to succeed. And,
you know what? I'll take opposing position against that. I think a lot of programs here in the United States are built for entrepreneurs, but it's the people who have the drive to go for it, to ask the right questions, to meet the people necessary. I think, I have a bunch of people on the Patreon, right, who basically they have kids that are about to go into college. And one guy was asking me for like my advice, like their kid wants to go to school in California. I think Berkeley. And I said, you know what, let him go. There are fundamentally some schools out there that will give you this inside connection to an industry that other colleges won't. Like if you go, I think the decision was between Carnegie Mellon and the other one was UC Berkeley. And they were like, which one should they go to, especially if they're trying to do computer science, right? And I said, well, if they're interested in doing research, they should go to Carnegie Mellon. If they're trying to do actual, like they want to go into the private side, find other co-creators who are there, they're entrepreneurs and want to develop software and do stuff like that, then they should go to UC Berkeley, because some schools, they have this inside track in industry that gets you through the door at multiple tech companies. And then it just goes from there. And once you have that experience in an industry, then you can branch out and create your own products on the side after you've got like a few years of experience. So imagine all the companies right now where you've got people that went from college to Google, and then they founded they left Google, they got some VC money and founded their own company. And now they turned that $100,000 idea into $1 billion idea, So I think that there is a pipeline, but over time, it does get slowly eroded. And I think right now tech is actually one of the places where the United States has seen a lot of success, primarily because we have pipelines like that. I don't know. I think this country is so unique in the way that they do everything. I just think that for the general population and the general public, the more you put into the system is the more you'll get out. Don't expect to sit there and just get a handout. Don't think that just because you have a degree, everything is going to work out for you. No, like the degree is only a badge that says, you know what, you're allowed in the door. No one is going to let you, like, it's almost like a badge that says you're allowed into a building. Okay, great. You're allowed to go into the building, but then what? You have to put in the work. You have to do everything you can to belong there. So, yeah. And it's the same thing with all of us, man. 100% agree.
Yeah, I mean,
Chris. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, there's a reason why I'm doing okay. And, to be very honest, I'm not very concerned financially, right? I could go work at Costco or, if I really was that stressed out, but I like what I do. And working at UDoc is a pretty good gig, and I'm really excited to start my new role. And but what I'm getting after is like I was very much in the library until 2 or 3 a.m. Making sure that projects were done, and I'd have people messaging me like, "Oh, dude, this party, that party." It's like, sorry, man. Like, but I was able to graduate in 4 years. I was able to get out of school with a 6-figure job, in 2013 with, $100,000 salary. It's not bad, and, been able to continue to persist and do well with that. And I knew a lot of people that, took the extra time. That's fine. Take an extra time, take an extra year. That's fine. I get it. I know what it's like to shove in 20 credits in a semester. It's not fun. So I get it. If you have to split it up and do whatever you need to do. But I knew a lot of people that just assumed they could go to school and party. Like I knew multiple people that literally within their first 2 years had to flunk out because they didn't have the GPA to continue, and it's sad. And, some of them land on their feet, but some of them don't, and, nothing is given to you in life, right? This isn't a welfare state. You have to, for most of us at least, and you have to work, to get what you want. And it's okay if you just want to work to live. But, I get that. But there's a piece of you taking a little bit of time, getting yourself out of like the rat race for a second and just thinking, if I'm going to be putting my time into something for 40 hours a week, what can I do from a very strategic standpoint to do better? And I think a lot of times people will just get stuck and they'll just continue, and then they'll just complain and assume that the rut that they're in is because of the government or where they grew up or what they studied. And it's just like, it's literally the world of opportunity here in the US, and you can literally do whatever you want, right? Everything that came out of the United States was created by people no smarter than us, right? They just were able to put in the time.
Hey, Matt, sorry, I got to go. I didn't realize it was 12 o'clock.
That's all good, my guy.
I'll see you later, man.
Yeah, brother.
Bye.
But I did want to close out on this one. 100% agreed with Chris. Came to the U.S., third world country, got master's and PhD, and making a killing now. Have my own consulting firm. But I think he means firm. Besides Fortune 100 company job opportunities in the United States is unparalleled, and I think that's what me and Mr. Patel were chatting about. But
gotta have that side hustle.
I have one, man. I have many. But luckily for me, my hobby is investing, and other people, other people are more so about jet skis and stuff like that. But anyway, Mr. Patel, thank you so much. Great stream as always. You guys rock. Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone's patience. If you could we will eventually be getting to the place where we are live streaming full time on the Cashflow Chronicles channel. So let me just put that in the chat box for you guys. If you could just do me a quick favor and go like that. We're in the process of being monetized. So not very far from now, there will be a time where me and Mr. Patel are streaming there full time. So really looking forward to seeing you guys over there. We've hit over 1,000 subs at this point. So we did apply for monetization. We will see how long that takes to get it. And hopefully in the near future, we will be over there full time. So you guys don't have to play this game. But this stream, as soon as I hit end, will no longer be on the Matt Money channel. You'll have to wait until I re-upload it to the Cashflow Chronicles channel. I hope this video and stream found you guys well. I appreciate it. Might have been a little bit political. I appreciate the time was a little bit later than I wanted. I had to take a shower after getting a haircut, which is why my hair is all wet still. I was covered in hair, and I did not want to be itchy for the rest of the evening. So there's that. I'm going to go make some dinner really quick and call it an evening. Hopefully, I will see you guys tomorrow with Mr. Patel. Maybe we might wait till Thursday. I have to see what he has the ability to do. But really appreciate it as always. Looking forward to getting started on Cashflow Chronicles TV. Looking forward to you guys signing up over there. And yeah, it's a good time. As always, love hanging out with you guys. So we will talk to you guys. Why they hate on the jet skis. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, invest so you can have the jet skis. That's not a problem. I didn't mean to offend you, but I'm just saying my hobby, luckily for me, is investing. So I love investing and making money. It's something where my brain works and clicks very, very well. And hopefully you guys can learn a little bit from it. You guys rock, and I will see you guys on the next one. Cheers.